Is funding Sesame Street a judicious use of soft power?
Well, Michael, the way you put it is the way I hope folks considering your poll today will think about it. This isn't just funding a kid show for children, millions of children in countries like Iraq. It's a show that helps teach values, helps teach public health, helps prevent kids from dying from dysentery and disease, and helps push values like collaboration, peacefulness, cooperation in a society where the alternative is ISIS, extremism, and terrorism. And to your point, it's pennies on the dollar.
I am so happy I'm not a Democrat for a variety of reasons, but today I'm extra ecstatic because now these people are forced to go on television and with a straight face defend giving $20 million for some crappy Sesame Street show in Iraq that I'm sure nobody watched. Joining me now, Congressman Chip Roy from the great state of Texas. Chip, you have to be absolutely loving this right now. Imagine having to go on television and actually defend that kind of slop. No one supports this. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought that was parody. I heard it and I thought that was somehow a joke or something that somebody was on there trying to defend that. But that's what we're dealing with. And at least in that case, it was a Democrat. All too often, it's my Republican colleagues who, unfortunately, a lot of us were offering amendments to strip these things out over the last several years. You'll remember during the speaker's debate a couple of years ago, one of the key things we fought for was the ability to offer lots of amendments, particularly amendments to cut spending. Well, we did that, and we offered amendments. For example, Eli Crane offered one to cut USAID by 50%. And unfortunately, 114 of my Republican colleagues voted against that amendment. And I'm not here to, look, we got to go beat the Democrats, and Republicans are united right now generally to do that. But you're seeing the consequence of years of the establishment that were opposing those of us trying to highlight all of these things. I offered amendments to strip UNRWA, United Nations, nonsense, sending money to the Gaza and the Palestinians and Hamas, and they were funding our enemies. So, funding the United Nations generally, the World Health Organization, all things that we should be defunding. And we had trouble getting our Republican colleagues to agree. I think Elon and Doge and the president are going to start changing some minds, I hope.
Can you give me the why on that for the establishment Republicans, Chip? And this is what I mean by that. It's not hard to figure out why some filthy communist activists would get a job at USAID and go teach child trannies in the Philippines how to put a condom on. But why would establishment Republicans, what do they get out of any of this stuff? What do they get out of funding the World Health Organization? Why?
Well, there's two or three things going on. Let me give you a legitimate defense of my colleagues broadly, which is a lack of staffing in Congress relative to the executive branch. We are overwhelmed thousands to one, right? I only have about 6 or 7 staff here that are dedicated to policy and communications. And I just lost several of them to the administration. So it's hard for us to keep up with all the stuff. And we have to go track all of this stuff while everything's incoming. But now let me give you the more cynical view, which is too many of my Republican colleagues have never met a spending program that they didn't like because they view it as a way to basically buy votes, particularly when your leadership is solely focused on so-called majority makers, that is the more moderate ends of the conference, saying, well, if we don't win those seats, then we won't have the majority. Now, let me just take you back. You remember I ran against Wendy Davis in around Austin, Texas in 2020. Well, I was pretty unabashedly, outspokenly conservative in an R+4 district. That is a marginal district. Yet I found a way to increase that majority, win, and actually outperform most of my colleagues. And I won that seat with 7-point margin. But it just took work. I didn't hide from my views. I didn't hide from my beliefs. I ran on what I call healthcare freedom. I ran on cutting programs. I gave her so many ads to run against me, and she ran them all. But you know what? Go out and convince your voters. So anyway, that's a long-winded way to say I think my colleagues say they like to cut spending. And by the way, if I hear another Republican say that they want to talk about the phrase, we have a revenue problem instead of a spending problem, I sit in these meetings, all of my colleagues say that, yet offer no efforts to actually cut spending. Those of us that are trying to put forward efforts to cut spending, well, they go, oh, guys, we can't do that. Well, we can't touch Medicaid. We can't go touch. Oh, but okay, Joe Biden expanded food stamps. We didn't support it, but now that'd be really hard to cut. Yeah, we don't like the Green New Deal, but I need my free money for my corn states. I need my free money for my oil and gas companies in Houston, whatever it is. Our guys need to just say there's no more room in the inn. You don't get any more grants. You don't get any more subsidies. We're going to stop the spending and we're going to clean up the government. But, you got to have leadership. And God bless Elon and the president for providing some of that leadership right now.
Chip, real quick, handicap this spending bill that's coming. I know you're all over this thing trying to hammer out some sort of a decent bill. We rarely win. In fact, I take that back. We never win these things. Are we going to win this one?
Well, I hope so. We had a really good meeting in the White House last week, and I don't tend to be one that divulges contents of private meetings, but a lot of it's been reported. And we were doing, I think, the really hard work of trying to force the conversation about what we need to do on the tax front and the spending front. Now, you and I, and most of the conservatives I know, would abolish most or all of the tax code. We'd go back to something. I appreciate what the president wants to do in terms of external collection with tariffs, but you need to make sure that you're not taxing people too much on the inside, right? The Internal Revenue Service and our income tax code and all the complexities of the tax code. Cut it, abolish it, get rid of it. However, every Republican I know is totally fine running on tax cuts, but refuse to do any of the spending cut side. So what I'm saying is, guys, I want your tax cuts. I want to actually raise you. I'll see your $5 trillion of tax cuts, and hell, I'll give you 7 or 8. But you got to give me at least a certain amount of cuts. We believe we need to get at least $2 to $2.5 trillion of cuts over 10 years. Now, Jesse, let me be very clear about what I mean. That is only $200 billion a year out of a $7 trillion total government spend. That's what I'm asking my colleagues to give me as cuts, as a down payment on what we need to do to going forward. And a lot of them are saying, we can't do that. That's too hard. Well, and I'm telling them, guys, if you want your tax cuts, then you're going to give me your spending cuts. And you know how they respond to that? They go out to the press and they say, Chip Roy opposes tax cuts. Not true. I oppose blank check just saying, oh, I'm going to do tax cuts because I want to go buy off my voters, but I'm not going to do the hard work of spending cuts. I'm going to keep fighting that fight.
Keep after him, Congressman. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Jesse. God bless.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.